Hey, this is Joe Hoff, Senior Product Manager for our Dynamo DB Document Management offering, here with another video sharing the progress of our 11 billion document benchmark. So, looking at our latest batch from our Open Migrate tracker here, we can see we kicked this one off on May 15th. It's been chugging along for a little bit here. We're still over 10,000 documents a second, which is going great. Still no errors for this migration, and have around 400,000 or 400 million documents left to be migrated. But everything has continued to go great. As of this recording, we have about 10 billion documents in the system. So we're almost to our goal of 11 billion, and we haven't really seen any significant slowdown. So that has continued to be great. So for this video today, we really wanted to pull back the covers on the AWS backend side and kind of go through what the AWS console looks like and what we're looking for when we are monitoring these services, especially when we're monitoring during something like this where there is an incredible amount of data getting pumped into the system. So today it will be more of a back-end video. We're not really going to dive into OCMS, but we will show exactly what we're monitoring for and how we set up these instances. So first, we'll head over to the AWS console login. And the first place I think makes sense to visit is going to be our Dynamo DB instance. So here's our Dynamo DB dashboard, and we're just going to head over to the tables. So for our benchmark, we do have a few different tables set up in a few different instances, but this is the main table for our benchmark. It's going to be our document properties. So this is where all of the documents and folders and their properties are getting stored. If you watched yesterday's video, you saw us hop into this table as well when we were looking at specific metadata. So right now, this is the general overview screen for the Dynamo table. You can see right now we have about 10 billion, a little over 10 billion rows in here. Some of these are folder rows, so not all documents, but we will have, at the end of this, we'll have a little bit over 12 billion rows, including the document and the folder rows. So you can also see here that we're at 4.53 terabytes used, and you can just get the general gist of the table from right here. So we showed this yesterday as well, but Dynamo allows you to obviously view all the items that are in the table, and it happens from this screen here. So you need to be careful using this screen because you can easily run a scan on your table. By default, it's going to do a scan if you're running a search. So that's what we definitely want to avoid, because with 10 billion objects in this table, that scan is going to take a very long time. So usually if you want to find a particular item, you can just run a simple query based on the object ID. That's going to be the fastest way of getting something using the key value. And to show off what we did yesterday too, you can click any of these items and you can just really quickly see the metadata that they have. So this looks like it's an AP invoice document. Here's the name, object ID. You can see all that stuff very easily. In terms of setting up this table, this is going to be the one that is really hit hard during the migration, since everything is getting written into this. So really for DynamoDB, there's two main levers that you can adjust after the table has been set up, and that's the read units and the write units. So right now we're not really reading anything out of the table, so our read units are very low. After this migration runs, we would expect basically these values not to be flipped, but the read units to go up significantly and the write units to go down significantly. So right now we're at 26,000 write units for the capacity. So that's per second. We do have a little alert when things go over 20,000. So that's what this here is. So really, if you need to change the capacity of your table, this is where you're going to do it. You just update these numbers here, you hit the save button, and it takes maybe around 30 seconds to a minute for those to update live. So the other main thing that we like to look at here for our Dynamo DB tables is the metrics for these. So really the two big ones, like we already kind of talked about, are going to be your read and write capacity. So we can see here, let's head into our write capacity. This is the provisioned line here. So we had that 26,000 that you saw, and this is what we're actively consuming. And this is from the last hour. So we can head something like the last week and look at this, and you can really get a picture of when our migrations have been running. So when our migrations are running, we're really consuming a lot of this write capacity, and then we'll hit a lull before we get the next migration kicked off, and then we'll head back up to consuming. So if you want to see exactly how much write you're consuming, you can get a really clear picture of that, and you can select anything up to the last couple of weeks from here. Same thing with the read capacity. We can change this to the last couple of weeks as well. And you can just get an idea of when we're doing our read capacities. And honestly, a lot of these are from when I was recording videos of the system, is when we changed the read capacity from that table to go up, and then because when we are using the system, we don't want to have 5 read capacity units. It's just not enough. So these spikes that you see here are when we are actively consuming them, making recordings in the instance. Other important things that we can look at here in the metrics is we can look at the throttling of read and write requests. So if you ever see that there is kind of maybe a problem, or you're not understanding why the system isn't functioning as you expect, you can head into throttled read requests. Doesn't look like we've had any recently, but over the last week we can see, hey, someone accidentally ran scans in the system at various times, and we can head back maybe even 2 weeks and we can see other throttled read requests. So normally when we see throttled read requests, that just means we're obviously overtaking what we've set up for read requests. These are getting throttled, so we need to figure out why we were making so many read requests, and if we can solve that system maybe via code, user activity, or if we just need to update the read requests themselves. Similar to write requests, we can come in and see if we've gotten any throttled write requests, and haven't really over the last couple of weeks, which also kind of makes sense. This looks like this was on May 1st, so this was probably right when we were experimenting with exactly how many write units we needed when we had our OMs running. And since then, we haven't really throttled too much of anything. So the write requests have been going very well. So other things that we can see here in the metrics, there's latency metrics, stream metrics we don't really have turned on, so we're not going to worry about those. You can see scan and query metrics, so these are also helpful when you have a lot of items in your table you don't really want to be scanning. So you can come here and see when scans have happened, and exactly how many items were getting returned via those scans. So that's another useful metric to be looking at if the table isn't performing to the degree that you think it should be. Outside of just the Dynamo tables, we can also look at the Elasticsearch service. So for our benchmark, we don't have too much in terms of the Elasticsearch service compared to exactly how much is in the Dynamo table. As we specified in the kickoff, right now we're really only containing folders in our Elasticsearch service to be able to search on them. But we can hop in here and look at exactly how our Elasticsearch cluster is set up, and we can see how we can configure it if we need to change it. So right now, the overview of our cluster is right here, and we can see pretty much everything that we need to. We can see that this has 2 availability zones. We can see exactly how large the instance we're setting it up on is. We can look at the number of instances and the number of master instances. So the other thing to keep in mind here is this is an overview of the cluster. If we need to view anything from that cluster, Amazon does provide a Kibana box. We have ours set up on a VPC out of the box for security reasons. So if we wanted to view the actual data in this cluster, we would need to log onto a box that is within this VPC and then view this Kibana dashboard. But that is how you would be viewing items that are a part of this Elasticsearch index. So we're going to head over to probably the most important tool for looking at what's going on in our cluster is this cluster health tab. So right here, this is the overall health of the cluster. Seeing green here is good. Don't really spend too much time. We don't spend too much time looking at the overall health if all of this checks out. The important things to be looking at for performance are under the key performance indicators, obviously. And really for us, what we're looking at when we're really driving a lot of documents into both Dynamo and Elastic is the indexing rate and what this looks like, and making sure that our cluster can handle the indexing rate that we're throwing at it. So again, this looks pretty familiar in terms of how you can change all of the metrics here. And you can see these kind of peaks and valleys look pretty similar to what we were seeing with the write capacity units for Dynamo, and that makes sense. So we're moving in a bunch of data at the same time. It's going to be getting indexed at the same time as well. So we can also come down here and we have the indexing rate, and then we would also want to see the indexing latency. So the indexing latency is very important to keep down to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So you want to be looking at these and not exceeding really milliseconds in our opinion. So those are some key indicators. We can also see here, so here's the CPU utilization for master instances. You can see it never gets that high. You can look at the data instances. It really consumes more memory than it does CPU, but all of these look good and under control. So those are the metrics that we usually look at when we're running a big migration and we're just monitoring the instance in general. So the other thing that you can do here, obviously, is here's the overview of the cluster. You can configure and change the cluster from here as well. So you can change the amount of availability zones that we need, the instance type, the number of instances, all that good stuff is configured right here from the dashboard. We are also taking a snapshot every morning, so if something happens to the instance, we have at least a snapshot from earlier in the day that we can fall back to. All of that stuff is handled here. So after the Elasticsearch instance, really the only other thing that we look at here are our EC2 instances. And the EC2 instances being what we're running our open migrates on and what we're running our OCMS on. So you can see here, here's the overview of our instances in this region. Our OM instances are running on very large instances that give us a lot of access to CPU and threads. to keep up that speed of around 10,000 documents per second. So when we're looking at these, we can get the general description of the box after you click on it. And really the only thing that we would be looking at here is going to be over on the monitoring tab. So this gives you kind of what you would expect to need to see. You got your CPU utilization, disk reads and writes, and the important thing for us right now is the network in and out, really how much network we're consuming during these massive migrations, which you can see is quite a lot. So we just needed to make sure that we have enough capacity to handle these. And you can see again, these are pretty much corresponding with the spikes when we kick off a new batch of the migration. And then lastly, we can pop into an OCMS box and we can see, so this is a much smaller box, it's just a T2 medium, and the data here correlates to that. We can see that the network here is used much it's used much less than anything that we have on those OM boxes that have been churning for a few days, migrating in all of these documents. So thanks for tuning in. Hope that this gave you a good idea of kind of how we've set up our AWS instance. Hopefully it will help you be able to set up your own AWS instances and kind of what you need to look for and monitor when you're moving a massive amount of documents around using Elasticsearch and Dynamo DB. And tune in tomorrow for some more updates on the benchmark. Thanks so much.